The lights inside the Miyazawa home were still glowing when silence swallowed the Setagaya neighborhood that night, December 30th, 2000. It was just past 11 p.m. when the next-door neighbor, Mrs. Haruko, heard a dull sound, something between the creak of a wooden board and the soft thud of a closing door. She looked out the window, saw only the reflection of Christmas lights glimmering from house number 123 Kamisoshigaya Street, and assumed the winter wind was to blame. She couldn't imagine that only a few meters away an entire family was about to be erased from existence, swiftly, silently, and with precision that defied logic. The Miyazawa home stood at the edge of a park, a quiet border of Tokyo where the rustle of trees merged with the distant hum of late-night trains. Mikio Miyazawa, 44, worked at an advertising firm, methodical, predictable, returning home at 9 with his worn gray suit and folders of reports. His wife, Yasuko, 41, was a gentle elementary school teacher, described by neighbors as the quiet heart of the community. Their daughter, Nina, 8, and son, Ray, 6, were already in bed, wrapped in their Christmas pajamas. The family embodied a portrait of Japanese stability, order, routine, and calm simplicity. That night the temperature dipped below zero, and the wind from the north rattled the window blinds. Inside, Mikio sat before his computer typing emails. Yasuko cleaned up the dinner table. Nina colored on the living room floor. It was an ordinary night, the kind no one remembers, until something invisible shifted in the air. At 11:25 p.m., according to forensic estimates, a shadow scaled the rear fence separating the house from the park. No one heard footsteps, only the faint flutter of a curtain stirred without wind. Later, investigators would find traces showing the intruder had climbed to the second floor, using a metal railing and entering through the small bathroom window, too narrow for most men, but possible for someone thin and determined. There were faint glove prints on the frame. No one inside stirred. Ray was the first to die. He never woke up, suffocated in his bed. Yasuko heard something upstairs and ran, but it was too late. She was stabbed repeatedly, brutally, and fell near the hallway. Mikio dashed up from his desk, the computer still humming, and fought the attacker. The struggle was violent. Blood spattered walls, handprints smeared across surfaces, but Mikio too was killed with several precise blows. Nina tried to hide downstairs, clutching a toy, but the intruder found her. She was killed beside the sofa. The massacre took less than 15 minutes. But what sets the Miyazawa case apart is not the violence. It's what came after. The killer didn't flee. He stayed. He stayed inside the house for hours. Evidence later revealed a chilling routine. After murdering the family, the killer washed his hands in the kitchen sink, used Mikio's computer to browse a website, ate ice cream from the freezer, sprawled on the sofa, and possibly slept. Blood-mixed footprints traced his calm movements through the house. He left his own clothes neatly folded, scattered papers, ate snacks, and left behind countless clues, yet none led to him. When police arrived the next morning, alerted by Yasuko's mother, they entered a crime scene that defied reason. Doors locked from the inside, except for the bathroom window, the computer still on, the freezer door ajar. The killer's bloody clothes lay abandoned on the stairs, replaced by a set belonging to Mikio. His footprints, the unique pattern of Slazenger sneakers sold only in South Korea, crisscrossed the hallway. DNA beneath Yasuko's nails pointed to a man of mixed East Asian and European ancestry. A note written in clumsy Japanese characters sat near the table. Every clue promised an answer. Each opened another maze. Japan, a nation proud of its safety and order, was stunned. The country with one of the world's lowest murder rates now faced a crime that shattered its sense of security. That night, while Tokyo slept beneath a pale moon, Setagaya remained awake, windows glowing, people staring into the dark, asking how evil could enter through such a small opening and leave only silence behind. Police sealed the home for weeks. House number 1223 became a whispered curse. No one ever moved back in. Investigators cataloged over 12,000 pieces of evidence: hairs, fibers, fingerprints, footprints, even feces left in the toilet. The killer had eaten, slept, used the bathroom, and yet vanished without a trace. No exit prints, only entry, as if he had dissolved into the frozen air of December. From that moment on, the Miyazawa case ceased to be just a crime. It became a mirror, reflecting the fragility hidden behind the glass walls of modern Japan, a reminder that even the safest homes can turn into labyrinths of horror within minutes. And 25 years later, the wind still rustles through the trees of Setagaya Park, carrying the same silence, the silence that began while the lights inside the house were still shining. The morning of December 31st, 2000, dawned cold and colorless. Winter sunlight struggled to reach Setagaya, as if even the sky hesitated to shine upon what had happened. At 10 a.m., neighbor Mrs. Haruko noticed something was wrong. Yasuko always opened the bedroom curtains at 7 sharp every morning, but that day the windows stayed shut. No laughter, no kettle whistling, only wind scratching the tiles. She called the house. No answer. Then phoned Yasuko's mother. At 10:45, the elderly woman arrived, knocking and calling her daughter's name. Silence answered back. Circling the house, she saw through the bathroom window. The curtain lifted, glass ajar. She called again. Nothing. Desperate, she summoned Mikio's brother, who arrived with a spare key. When they opened the door, a wave of cold air escaped, carrying death's stillness. What they saw inside would never leave them. Mikio lay near the stairs, partly covered by a coat. The walls were streaked with dried blood. Yasuko's mother screamed, the kind of scream that bends the air, and tried to run upstairs but was stopped. The call to police came at 11:15. Within minutes, the quiet street was surrounded by yellow tape and television vans. Setagaya's ordinary home had become Japan's most haunting crime scene. Detective Kenji Takayama entered with gloves and mask. Upstairs lay Yasuko, multiple stab wounds, arms raised in defense. Nina's room smelled faintly metallic, her stuffed bear still clutched in her arms. Ray was found in bed, face calm, as though asleep. Downstairs, the kitchen was spotless, the computer glowing. On the counter, half-eaten ice cream. On the couch, a folded jacket. The killers. The air reeked of detergent and blood. On the staircase, gloves, crimson-stained. In the bathroom, paper, towel, human waste. It was a blend of logic and madness, the order of an organized mind and the chaos of guilt. Early theory, a burglar interrupted, but nothing was stolen. Cash, jewelry, untouched. The intruder had lingered, calmly, methodically. He lived in the crime scene. He studied it. The forensic team found footprints with rare Schlesinger soles, sold only in South Korea. DNA samples pointed to mixed ancestry, East Asian and European. The revelation exploded in the media, spawning xenophobia and rumor. Meanwhile, data from Mikio's computer revealed it had been used at 1 a.m. The killer had surfed the internet, unhurried, under the same roof as 4 corpses. 250 officers flooded the neighborhood. Helicopters, dogs, forensic vans. Nothing. No exit trail. No escape route. The snow told no story of departure. So where did he go? A reporter asked. Takayama answered quietly. We don't know. Japan froze. Fear crept into its orderly suburbs. Families triple-locked doors yet slept uneasily. The case morphed from tragedy to national obsession. Theories multiplied: their military deserters, cults, foreign agents. None fit. The killer's every move was charted by timeline. 11:25 p.m. Entry. 11:40. First murders. 11:50. Struggle. 12:05. Silence. And then 3 blank hours. The killer's ghostly occupation of the home. Blood traces showed he was injured. Patched his wound with the family's towels. Drank water. Rested. He sat down, said Watanabe. Stunned. He breathed, then vanished. No exit, no witness, no name. Only the echo of his calm. By February 2001, the house had become a shrine of dread. Television crews filmed its still windows. Flowers and letters piled at the gate. Who did this? The screen asked. No one could answer. The fingerprints matched no database. The blood belonged to no nation. Even the assassin's clothing defied logic. Korean fabric, Japanese stitching, Mongolian pollen. A ghost, stitched from 3 worlds. On January 3rd, as investigators made their final sweep, Mrs. Haruko watched from her window. Since that night, she said later, no bird lands on that wall. For years, House 123 Kamisoshigaya stood empty, frozen in time, untouched by life. The government offered to demolish it, but the Miyazawa family refused. The home remains preserved, a monument to the unsolved, waiting, as if the killer might one day return. Outside, the park goes on, children play, wind moves through branches, but the shadow remains, the place where a window once opened to let in a ghost. Tokyo's first dawn of 2001 rose gray and hesitant. While fireworks echoed across the city, police convoys rolled through Setagaya. 180 officers swarmed the quiet suburb, turning House 123 Kamisoshigaya into a fortress of tape and cameras. Inside, time still refused to move. Chief Detective Takayama hadn't slept. The crime scene lights pulsed against frosted windows as technicians photographed every trace. We have everything, he muttered, except the man. Forensic reports filled hundreds of pages. Blood in 7 places, footprints of 3 types, 40 unknown fingerprints. The killer was everywhere and nowhere. Criminal psychologist Hiroshi Endo arrived the following week. "He's not a professional," he said. "He planned his entry, not his exit." Pointing to the sink, he added, "Who washes their hands after murdering a family? Someone trying to erase himself." The initial profile painted a young male, thin, right-handed, unstable, perhaps local, with mixed ethnic traits. The press turned it into a slogan, "The Nationless Killer." Fear and prejudice spread faster than facts. A crumpled note found on the floor bore childlike kanji, phrases like, "The wind does not die." Endo called it ritualistic scribbling, a mind trying to justify itself. In the lab, DNA was everywhere, yet matched no one. The killer had bled, touched, existed, and then vanished like steam. By the third week, police reenacted the crime with actors, mimicking each movement through the house. When the lights went out, the silence felt sacred. No one spoke. Why stay? Why eat ice cream? Why sleep? Some details haunted the investigators. Small circular cuts on Mikio and Yasuko's hands, as if the killer had taken something from them. A trophy, perhaps. Endo wrote, "Souvenirs are a psychopath's memory." No one proved it. By February, a sketch circulated through Tokyo. A young man with empty eyes. 2,000 interrogations. Hundreds of DNA tests. No match. Takayama scribbled in his log, "It's like chasing a ghost that left fingerprints, but no hands." Rumors grew. Spiritual groups lit candles outside the gate. The Miyazawa case was no longer just a crime. It had become a national haunting. Then Endo made a simple proposal. Don't look where he entered, look where he lives. Police mapped every resident within 800 meters. 672 interviews. Only one eyewitness, a teen who saw a dark figure on the wall around 11:30 p.m. "I thought it was a cat," he said. It was all they had. 3 months in, 1,000,000 man-hours spent. Nothing. The invisible face still floated on the station's board, a shadow without an owner. Takayama aged. Endo stopped sleeping, and the sealed house at night seemed to breathe. Guards swore they heard typing from the dark. Perhaps the wind, perhaps memory itself repeating the same endless question. Who was the man who stayed? By April 2001, 4 months after the murders, frustration had become the air inside Tokyo's Metropolitan Police. The name Miyazawa glowed in red ink across every wall. The country that prided itself on perfect order was now lost inside a maze of evidence. Foreign headlines called it the perfect murder of modern Japan. The government, fearing international embarrassment, allowed the FBI and Interpol to review the case. An unprecedented move. Special Agent Thomas Riley arrived from Washington, a veteran profiler, quiet and sharp-eyed. He listened as Takayama recounted every detail. The footprints, the DNA, the computer still glowing, the absence of escape. When the story ended, Riley simply said, "You're chasing a man, but this is trauma, not strategy." He stayed because he broke. Riley's theory, that the killer was emotionally shattered, not coldly calculating, changed everything. For weeks, detectives interviewed everyone the Miyazawas had known. Nothing. No motive. No link. Then, in May, a discovery. Pollen on the killer's jacket. From a plant native to southern Korea. Microscopic sand confirmed it. The jacket had been worn there recently. The case turned international overnight. Seoul agreed to cooperate. By July, Korean police traced the exact jacket model to 27 stores around Busan. One shopkeeper remembered selling it for cash to a quiet young man with a small scar on his neck. Security footage, grainy and dim, captured his outline. That crescent-shaped scar matched the kind of wound the killer would have suffered during his fight with Mikio. Takayama, Riley, and 2 translators flew to Korea. For 10 days, they chased the lead across ports, factories, and warehouses. But the trail ended in China. The same jackets were mass-produced and shipped across Asia. Hope dissolved once again. Still, Riley was convinced. "He's Korean-Japanese," he said. "A man between nations." Endo agreed. "Someone who belongs nowhere." The crime reflects that. By late summer, the Setagaya house remained sealed, a monument to dread. Guards rotated shifts, whispering about strange smells, faint typing sounds, lights that flickered at night. The case had already become folklore. In September, the FBI's official report arrived. Right-handed male, 1.65, 1.75 meters tall, deep hand wound, self-treated, stayed in the house for 10 hours in post-crime shock. The final note read, "The subject exhibits emotional attachment to the environment. He experiences comfort after the violence. He is not foreign in the house. He feels home within it." Takayama read the line over and over. Maybe the killer knew the Miyazawas. Maybe he'd sat on that very couch before. By October, momentum faded. Reporters left. Funding shrank. Yet Takayama kept returning to the house at night, sitting before the old computer, listening to the silence. He claimed the place still spoke. In 2002, new DNA sequencing found a rare protein marker, present in 1% of Korean, 0.5% of Japanese, a biological echo of identity divided, and Japan learned what it never wished to learn. Some ghosts don't cross borders. They are born on them, and they stay there forever. By 2003, the Miyazawa case had become an institutional ghost. Files piled high in windowless rooms. Detectives wandered through corridors like survivors of a war no one remembered declaring. Each piece of evidence felt more like a dream than proof. Blood, fibers, melted ice cream, fragments of the impossible. Japan had moved on, but Setagaya hadn't. The house stood boarded up, a scar in the middle of suburban calm. At night, the wind still rattled the same window where the killer had slipped in. Detective Takayama stayed on, half-funded, sleepless, haunted. He often parked near the park, staring at the dark outline of the house. "He's still here," he'd whisper. Rumors spread. A man seen watching the house, footprints near the fence, shadows behind glass. Nothing confirmed, yet fear thrives on the unconfirmed. By 2004, the case was downgraded. 9 full-time officers remained. Every new generation of investigators inherited the same evidence and the same emptiness. "Time is now our enemy," the report read. "Blood fades, memories fade, and the killer's ghost stands still." Psychologist Hiroshi Endo published The House That Dreams in 2006, portraying the murder as a symptom of spiritual collapse. "He didn't flee," he wrote, "because he hadn't realized he was already dead inside." The public was mesmerized. The killer became a mirror for the alienated, the overworked, the unseen. That same year, forensic tests found a rare intestinal bacterium in the killer's blood, common in diets rich in red meat, unusual in Japan, typical in Korea. The clue led nowhere, but it reignited curiosity for a while. As years passed, the evidence aged, freezers failed, memories blurred. "The Setagaya case is a dirty mirror," Takayama wrote in 2007. "The harder we look, the less we see." The park was rebuilt, but no children played near the fence. Parents whispered of a faceless man in the window. Urban legend fused with reality. Riley, the American agent, returned in 2008. "Do you still believe you'll solve it?" he asked. Takayama smiled wearily. "I don't seek justice anymore. I seek understanding." Riley's answer lingered like smoke. Maybe understanding is the punishment. By 2010, the case went digital. Thousands of files were scanned, and experimental AI cross-referenced DNA, geography, and time. Its result? The killer likely lived within 2 kilometers of the house. Takayama only nodded. "I always knew." That same year, an elderly woman found an unmarked envelope in her mailbox. Inside, a single line typed on yellowed paper. "The wind still blows from where I entered. Partial fingerprints. No match." The police dismissed it as a prank. Takayama filed it under memory. The following years blurred into silence. After the 2011 earthquake, Japan's focus shifted to rebuilding. Yet every December, someone still left flowers at the Miyazawa gate. No cameras, no words. In 2015, new DNA sequencing revealed something almost poetic. Genetic markers linking the killer to both Korea and Okinawa, 2 islands bound by shared pain. Science had confirmed what intuition already knew. The murderer was a man of 2 worlds. When asked about it on TV, an aging Takayama said, "He didn't leave Japan, he dissolved inside it." By the end of the decade, the case belonged to mythology. Plays, novels, conspiracies, everyone had their own Miyazawa theory, but the house remained empty, watching. On December 30th, 2019, 19 years to the day, a park security camera captured a figure pausing at the fence, thin, still, facing the same bathroom window, then gone. The footage was never released. Those who have seen it say only one thing: the Setagaya killer never left. He just learned how to live inside the silence. 20 years had passed. Winter 2020. Japan had fallen silent again. Masks on faces, fear in the air. Yet inside a gray building in Chiyoda, 7 people opened boxes that smelled of dust and preservation chemicals. The Setagaya murder case was coming back to life. The new task force was led by Inspector Kenji Mori, a forensic genealogist who had been 10 years old when the murders happened. "This time," he said, "we have tools they didn't." DNA samples were shipped to an American lab using advanced genealogical matching, the same technology that had cracked cold cases like the Golden State Killer. For the first time, Japanese police allowed their data to enter global DNA databases. It was a gamble of desperation and hope. By mid-2021, computers began returning results. Distant genetic matches pointed to a Korean-Japanese lineage. Families split between Osaka, Fukuoka, and Busan. One branch led to a man named Koji Nam, age 54, maintenance worker at a hospital, the same profession described in the killer's psychological profile, and he had once lived less than 3 kilometers from the Miyazawa home. Nam had moved to Busan right after the murders, changed names, vanished into routine jobs. When Mori and his team arrived in Korea in March 2022, they found his apartment empty, only a suitcase, a blood-stained towel, and a postcard showing a Japanese park. On the back, 20 winters later, I still hear the wind. Lab tests confirmed the blood was type A, genetically consistent with the Setagaya killer. Later, an archived medical sample from 2017, recovered from a Busan hospital freezer, sealed the truth, a 99.87% DNA match. But by then, Koji Nam had disappeared. Security cameras caught him walking alone toward the harbor, 3:27 a.m., gray coat, dark cap, small bag. He was never seen again. In December 2022, Japan quietly marked the case as virtually solved. Genetic identification confirmed, suspect missing, case closed pending location. Yet Mori wasn't content. On the anniversary night, he stood before the sealed house, watching the rusted gate sway. He placed the postcard on the ground and whispered, "You beat time, but not the truth." 2 years later, in 2024, digital facial reconstruction built Nam's likeness from DNA data. The result, a weary man with a long scar along his neck, the exact feature described by the lone witness in 2001. When shown the image, Yasuko's mother wept. "He looks sad," she said, as if he's asking to be forgiven. Today, the Setagaya house still stands, empty, guarded, frozen. Locals say the upstairs lights flicker in December nights, like the echo of a computer screen waking from sleep. Police never confirm it, but every New Year's Eve officers leave white chrysanthemums at the gate, and the wind still blows from where he entered. Time doesn't solve mysteries, it only softens them, the way water shapes stone. By 2025, the Setagaya murders had reached their 25th year. The crime was no longer a case file, it had become part of Japan's collective memory, a mirror, a warning, a prayer. Universities began teaching it as a social phenomenon rather than a crime. Criminologists called it the night Japan lost its urban innocence. Before 2000, Tokyo was considered untouchable. After Setagaya, doors were locked, windows barred, trust fractured. Harmony, people realized, had only been another word for denial. In 2023, Parliament passed the Miyazawa law, ensuring that no unsolved criminal evidence could ever be destroyed by expiration. Bureaucratically, it was an act of remembrance, symbolically, an apology to the dead. Schools use the case to teach empathy. "It's not about violence," one teacher said. "It's about listening, because even quiet houses can scream." The Miyazawa home itself became a quiet pilgrimage site. Still sealed, maintained by the city, it opened once a year for limited research visits. No signs, no tickets, just the path of gravel and the whisper of wind between boards. Inside, nothing had changed. The mugs still on shelves, the father's books open on the desk, the children's toys frozen mid-play. The air smelled of time itself. An investigator wrote afterward, "It's not a museum of tragedy, it's a museum of what remains." The story lived on in art. The award-winning film The House of Wind retold the events through the eyes of the little daughter, blending memory and dream. Indie filmmakers imagined the killer as metaphor, a specter of societal exhaustion. But online, the legend grew wilder. Forums claimed to see shadows in satellite photos. Late-night channels played distorted videos of whispers and lights flickering at 3:14 a.m. Police debunked them all, yet folklore doesn't obey facts. Meanwhile, Inspector Kenji Mori, now retired, lectured at universities. "The Setagaya case taught us that evil isn't grand," he told a crowd. "It's domestic. It wears slippers, eats ice cream, turns off the lights before leaving." The audience clapped, softly, reverently. That same week, a letter arrived at the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. No sender, postmarked from Osaka. Inside, 3 typed lines. "The wind does not sleep. The house still dreams. And time never closes the door." The typewriter model dated to 1998. No fingerprints, no DNA. The envelope remains in the evidence vault, tagged Anonymous 07-2025. It is the final entry in the Setagaya file. After that, only silence. And maybe, silence is the only way truth survives. By the time the Setagaya case turned 25, it no longer belonged to Japan alone. It was taught in police academies, debated in American forensic conferences, cited in sociology lectures, and even in architecture schools, studying the psychology of domestic space. In 2021, Oxford University's Criminology Institute added it to its Impossible Crimes curriculum. Professor Thomas Kiernan called it the perfect paradox of civilization, a society so safe it couldn't comprehend its own fracture. The FBI classified it as a model case for behavioral disruption within high-trust environments. French philosophers described it as the symbolic collapse of Japan's modern identity, but it was South Korea that humanized it. The 2023 documentary Between Sea and Snow told stories of mixed heritage families, Korean-Japanese descendants who felt torn between two nations. Sociologist Han Ji-soo wrote, "The Setagaya killer is the ghost of all borders, born the moment home ceases to mean belonging." The book was translated into 17 languages. In Berlin, graffiti on a wall quoted her words, "The house doesn't protect, it only remembers who came last." Forensic science also evolved from its shadow. Japan's 2020 genetic genealogy experiment inspired new global protocols. Labs in Germany, Canada, and Brazil began sharing cross-border DNA data, the Setagaya effect. In 2024, Interpol launched Project 1412, named after the date of the murders, dedicated to cold case cooperation worldwide. The influence reached art and design. In São Paulo, the installation Domestica, the empty house filled transparent walls with invisible air currents. At the entrance, a sign read, "The wind still blows from where he entered." Visitors left quietly, shaken, unable to explain why. Netflix released The Locked House Mystery, devoting a full episode to Setagaya. "Imagine evil entering through a window," the narrator said, "and locking the door behind it. That's Setagaya, the crime that refused to be forgotten." Over 80 million people watched. For many, it was their first glimpse of Japan's wound, the impossible inside the ordinary. Even architecture changed. Japanese housing firms designed dual-access windows, openable from both sides yet monitored, a balance between safety and humanity. A new discipline emerged, emotional preventive design. The Kyoto Symposium of 2025 opened with a single sentence projected on screen, "The real crime is isolation." The name Miyazawa came to symbolize an entire nation, kind, structured, yet fragile. The four family members were remembered as keepers of a collective memory. At Tokyo's National Police Museum, a permanent exhibit titled The Silent House displays digitized reports, a replica of Mikio's desk, and the reconstructed face of Koji Nam, the man who vanished into the wind. In the center, speakers play actual field recordings of the Setagaya wind. Visitors swear they can hear whispers within it. At the 2025 World Criminology Conference in The Hague, Inspector Kenji Mori, now retired, took the stage. "We learned from Setagaya that a house is a living organism," he said. "It breathes, observes, remembers, and when blood touches its walls, it never sleeps again." The audience stood in silence. Minutes passed before the applause began. Slow, deliberate, global. That night in his hotel room, Mori opened the window. The Dutch wind swept across the canal. He closed his eyes and heard the old words again, from a postcard found years ago in Busan. 20 winters later, "I still hear the wind." And softly to no one he whispered back, "So do we." Crimes end in files. People don't. They keep walking through the invisible corridors horror leaves behind. 25 years later, the indirect survivors of the Setagaya murders were still alive, scattered across cities, carrying the same quiet stare of those who've looked into the abyss and returned. Kenji Mori woke early. Even in retirement, his desk in Yokohama was always the same. Open notebook, blue pen, old reports stacked like ghosts. Some mornings he flipped a random page, reading names, dates, distances, not searching for answers but checking that silence hadn't lied. He lectured occasionally at Waseda University. "Criminals pass," he told students. "Mysteries don't." When asked if he believed Koji Nam was still alive, Mori looked out the window. "If he is," he said, "he isn't himself anymore. And if he isn't, the wind still is." The Setagaya house still stood, surrounded by grown trees and invisible birds. Cameras, fences, warnings. On foggy mornings, the park's mist drifted toward the gate and elders whispered that the air there felt colder. "Even the wind remembers," said one. Linda, Yasuko's mother, lived quietly in Hachioji, 81 now, her apartment filled with plants and photographs. Maikyo, Yasuko, Nina, Ray, all smiling from a December that never ended. Every afternoon she lit incense. Reporters sometimes asked if she still wanted justice. "No," she'd answer. I want them remembered as they were, loud, messy, alive. She kept a red notebook full of letters left by strangers who'd visited the house. One note written in Portuguese read, "I never met you, but I think of you when I close my window at night." Linda said the words felt like prayers in a language the world hadn't forgotten. Takayama, the old detective, tended orchids in Nagano. Every December, he mailed a blank envelope to Tokyo containing a single word, present. The police logged it each year. No sender. Same date, December 14th. Riley, the former FBI liaison, died in 2023. Among his papers was an unpublished book titled The Man Who Stopped the Wind. A single sentence was underlined. When a crime can't be solved, maybe time was the killer. The house remains unchanged. Windows sealed. Rusted gate. No nameplate. Every winter, someone ties a white ribbon to the fence, always at the same height as the bathroom window. The police call it a hoax. Locals say they once saw an old woman doing it at dusk. Children today don't know the story. To them, it's just an empty house near the swings. But their parents, passing by, hold their hands a little tighter. The wind moves through the trees, carrying a sound, half whisper, half memory. Inside that house, time doesn't move. It circles, and everyone who remembers, visits, or dreams becomes part of the same wind that never stopped blowing. Time doesn't erase. It only rearranges what remains. 25 years later, the wind moving through the cracks of the old Setagaya house still felt the same. Cold, clean, curious. Maybe coincidence, maybe memory, or maybe the wind was simply the one thing that never left. In the park, the pale winter sun filtered through bare branches. Children played hide-and-seek, unaware that life itself had once hidden there. Their laughter sliced through the quiet like light through fog, and for a heartbeat, the place felt like home again. At 4:47 p.m., and a patrol officer stopped at the gate. He had watched over this house for years. From his pocket, he took a small folded note and slid it under the fence. It read, "So the wind will not forget." He looked up at the second floor, sealed windows reflecting a colorless sky. For a moment, he thought he saw a figure behind the glass. Not a ghost, just light trying to cross time. Inside, silence still had weight. Furniture stood like witnesses. Dust floated in rays of light. On the old computer, one key trembled faintly. Tick, 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 as if the air itself were typing. Not time passing, but memory breathing. Outside, dry leaves spiraled. The wind climbed the wall, slid under the eaves, and escaped through the same opening where the killer had entered 25 years ago. People said the park's wind never sounded the same after that night. Some heard footsteps. Others swore it whispered a single plea. Don't erase me. Sometimes stories don't end, they settle. Between papers and dust, between photos and echoes, between what the wind carries away and what time brings back. Perhaps that's how truth survives, not as an answer, but as a presence. On New Year's Eve 2025, as Tokyo's lights shimmered across the skyline, a single snowflake landed on the house's roof, and for the first time in 25 years, the front door lock shifted slightly with the wind's breath. The gate creaked open, just enough for air to pass through. Those walking by the park that night said they heard something soft, the faint sound of a family breathing. No one saw anything, but the wind did. It always does. Time never closes the door. It only leaves it ajar, so the wind can return.